Before we start, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I know my horror-loving audience understands how much even small support means for this channel's future. Every like and comment helps this small channel survive and grow, and I truly appreciate it. All right, now let's begin. My name is Jesse Watkins, and I live in a cabin about 8 miles outside of Bakersville, North Carolina. It's my grandfather's place, built sometime in the 1950s, sitting on 40 acres of mountain land that's been in my family for generations. I moved out here 3 years ago, looking for quiet after spending my 20s in Charlotte working a job that was slowly killing me. Out here, I can breathe. Or at least I could. The cabin is basic. 2 rooms, a wood stove for heat, a porch that wraps around 3 sides. No neighbors within shouting distance. The nearest paved road is a 20-minute drive down a rutted track that turns to soup when it rains. It's exactly the kind of isolation I was looking for. I'd been living there for about 2 years without incident. Saw plenty of wildlife. Bears going through the trash, deer in the yard every morning. A bobcat once that stared at me from the wood line like it was deciding whether I was worth the effort. Normal mountain stuff that you get used to pretty quickly. Then one night in March, something changed. It was cold that night, temperature down in the 30s, with a wind that came straight down from the peaks and cut through everything. I'd gone to bed early, around 9, because there wasn't much else to do. No TV, no internet, just books and the occasional battery-powered radio when I felt like hearing human voices. I woke up around midnight to a sound outside. At first I thought it was the wind, that particular howl it makes when it comes through the valley at a certain angle. But this was different. It had a rhythm to it, a pattern. It started low, almost subsonic. Something I felt in my chest more than heard. Then it rose in pitch, turned into this wavering howl that sounded like it was coming from multiple sources at once. High and low tones together, creating harmonics that shouldn't have been possible from a single animal. I lay in bed listening, trying to place it. I'd heard coyotes plenty of times. They sound like maniacs, yipping and howling in this chaotic chorus. This wasn't that. It was too controlled, too deliberate. The howl changed. The high tone stayed constant, but the low tone started modulating, turning into something that sounded almost like speech. Not words exactly, but syllables. Rhythmic sounds that my brain kept trying to interpret as language. Then it shifted again, and my blood went cold. The sound turned into something between a pig squeal and a human scream. That wet, guttural quality that pigs have when they're distressed, mixed with the higher register of a person in pain. It lasted maybe 10 seconds, then dropped back into that low subsonic rumble. I got out of bed and moved to the window. My cabin sits in a small clearing, and from the bedroom I can see most of the yard and the tree line beyond. There was enough moonlight to make out shapes, but not details. I scanned the edge of the woods, looking for movement. Nothing, just trees and shadows and that sound continuing its cycle. Low rumble, rising howl, pig scream, back to rumble. I realized I was holding my breath and forced myself to breathe normally. This was probably just some animal I wasn't familiar with. Maybe a fox, they can make some bizarre sounds. Or an owl. Some of them have calls that don't sound anything like you'd expect. The sound moved. It had been coming from the north side of the property, but now it was circling around toward the east. I went to the other window and looked out. Still couldn't see anything, but the sound was definitely closer now. Maybe 50 yards from the cabin instead of 100. It occurred to me that I should record this. I had my phone charging on the dresser. I grabbed it and opened the voice memo app, held it up to the window. The sound came again, that full cycle from rumble to howl to scream. I got about 30 seconds of recording before it stopped completely. Total silence. No wind, no insects, nothing. Just that oppressive quiet that feels like the world is holding its breath. I stood there with my phone in my hand listening. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5, nothing. I was about to go back to bed when I heard a new sound. Footsteps on my porch. Not the careful steps of a bear or the clicking of a deer's hooves. These sounded almost human. The measured pace of someone walking along the porch boards, their weight creaking the old wood. My cabin's porch is maybe 5 feet from my bedroom window. Whatever was walking out there was close enough that I should have been able to see it. I pressed my face against the glass and looked along the porch. Nothing. Empty boards. But the footsteps continued, moving from the east side around toward the front of the cabin. I could hear each step clearly, could hear the specific boards that always creaked in specific ways. Something was definitely walking on my porch. I moved through the cabin to the front room, trying to be quiet. The footsteps had stopped near the front door. I could see the door from where I stood, about 10 feet away. The moonlight coming through the window illuminated it clearly. The door handle started to turn. Slowly, like someone was testing it to see if it was locked. It was locked. I always locked it at night. The handle turned as far as it could go, then released. A pause. Then it turned again. Same slow testing motion. I stood there frozen, watching the handle turn. My phone was still in my hand, still recording. I don't know why I didn't stop the recording. Maybe some part of me wanted evidence that this was really happening. The handle stopped moving. Another pause, longer this time. Then I heard it. That sound from outside, but now it was right on the other side of the door. The pig scream, loud enough that it rattled the door in its frame. The sound stopped abruptly, and the footsteps started again, moving away from the door, back along the porch toward the side of the cabin. I followed the sound through the cabin, moving to different windows to try to see what was making it. At the side window, I finally saw something. A shadow, darker than the surrounding darkness, moving along the porch. It was tall, maybe 6.5 feet, and it moved wrong. The gait was too smooth, no natural bounce or sway. It looked like it was gliding rather than walking. The shadow reached the corner of the porch where it wraps around to the back of the cabin, and it stopped, turned, faced my window. I couldn't see features. No face, no details. Just a dark shape that was definitely looking at me. I was maybe 8 feet away with a window and a wall between us, but I could feel its attention like a physical weight. We stayed like that for what felt like forever. Me inside, it outside, separated by glass and wood and a locked door that suddenly seemed very inadequate. Then it made a sound. Not the howl or the scream. This was different. It sounded like my name. Jesse. Spoken in a voice that was almost familiar but not quite right. Like someone was imitating a person I knew but couldn't get the inflection quite perfect. Jesse, it said again. Not questioning, not calling, just stating, like it was confirming something it already knew. I backed away from the window. Kept backing until I hit the wall on the opposite side of the room. My phone was still recording, still running, still capturing every second of this. The shadow moved again, turned away from the window and walked off the porch. I heard its footsteps on the ground, moving away from the cabin toward the tree line. I rushed back to the window and looked out. I could see it crossing the yard. That dark shape, too tall and too smooth, moving toward the woods. When it reached the edge of the clearing, it stopped and turned back, faced the cabin one more time. Then it made that sound again, the full cycle, rumble, howl, pig scream. But this time there was something else underneath it, something that sounded like laughter. It stepped into the trees and disappeared. The normal night sounds returned slowly. First the wind, then some distant owl, then the usual creaks and settling of the cabin itself. Like the world had been paused and someone had just hit play. I didn't sleep for the rest of that night. Just sat in the front room with all the lights on and a hunting rifle across my lap that I wasn't sure I'd be able to use even if I needed to. When the sun came up, I went outside to look at the porch. The boards where I'd heard footsteps showed no tracks, no marks, nothing to indicate anything had been there. I checked the door handle. It turned smoothly, no sign of tampering. But when I looked at the ground below the side window where the shadow had stood, there was something, an impression in the dirt. Not a footprint exactly. More like someone had pressed a large smooth object into the ground and twisted it. The impression was maybe 18 inches across and perfectly circular. I went back inside and listened to the recording on my phone, all 30 minutes of it. The sounds were there, the howls, the pig scream, the footsteps, even my name being spoken, all of it clear and undeniable. But there was something else on the recording that I hadn't heard in real time. In the background, underneath all the other sounds, there was breathing. Slow and steady, like whatever was making those noises was doing it without effort. Like it could keep going all night if it wanted to. I still live in the cabin. I didn't move, didn't run away. Maybe I'm stubborn. Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I just don't have anywhere else to go. It comes back sometimes. Not every night. Not even every month. But maybe 4 or 5 times a year, I'll wake up to that sound. That howl that turns into a scream that turns into something I can't quite identify. Sometimes it stays in the woods. Sometimes it comes to the porch. It always says my name at least once. Always in that almost familiar voice that makes my skin crawl. I've learned to live with it. Learned to stay inside when I hear it, to keep my doors locked, to wait until morning before going outside. I don't try to see it anymore. Don't try to record it. Don't try to understand what it is or what it wants. Because here's the thing about that night. The worst part wasn't the sounds or the footsteps or even seeing that shadow on my porch. The worst part was realizing how thin the barrier is. How a door and some walls and a lock are really just suggestions. How whatever that thing is, it could probably get inside if it really wanted to. It just chooses not to, for now. And every time I hear that howl starting up in the distance, I wonder if tonight will be the night it changes its mind. If tonight will be the night the door handle turns and the lock doesn't hold, and I find out what happens when you stop being a curiosity and become something else. So I sit in the darkness and I listen to the porch howls and I wait for morning. Because that's all you can do sometimes. Just wait for the sun to come up and hope that whatever is outside stays outside. And try not to think about why it knows your name. If the first story stayed with you, consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Let me know how it made you feel. And if there's anything you think could be improved, your suggestions are always welcome. And don't go anywhere because the next stories are even more disturbing. My name is Travis McKee, and I'm a long-haul trucker. I drive routes all through the Southeast, mostly between Atlanta and various points in Appalachia. I've been doing it for 15 years, seen just about everything you can see from a truck cab at 3 in the morning. Drunk drivers, car accidents, wildlife crossing the highway. I thought I'd seen it all. The footage I'm about to describe came from my dash cam. I don't have the video anymore. It disappeared along with the account I uploaded it to, but I remember every frame of it. I wish I didn't. This happened on Route 19 outside of Bryson City, North Carolina. It was late February, around 2 in the morning. I was hauling a load of furniture from a warehouse in Georgia to a distribution center in Asheville. The road was empty, no traffic in either direction, just me and my headlights cutting through the darkness. I came around a curve and my headlights swept across something on the shoulder of the road. A person, standing right at the edge of the pavement, facing the road. I slowed down. My first thought was that someone had car trouble. Maybe their vehicle had broken down and they were waiting for help. But as I got closer, something felt wrong about the scene. The person was wearing what looked like a dress or a long coat, something dark that hung to their knees. They were completely still, not waving for help, not turning to look at my truck, just standing there facing the road. I pulled onto the shoulder about 30 feet past them and put on my hazards. Grabbed my flashlight and climbed out of the cab. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and my breath came out in clouds. "Hello," I called out. "You need help?" No response. The figure didn't move. I started walking back toward them, flashlight beam pointed at the ground so I wouldn't blind them. As I got closer, I could see more details. The person was tall, maybe 6 feet, and very thin. The coat or dress they wore was tattered, hanging in strips. Their hair was long and dark, hanging down over their face. "Hey," I said again, louder this time. "Are you okay? Do you need me to call someone?" The figure's head moved. Not turning toward me, but tilting slightly, like they were listening. The hair slid to one side, and I caught a glimpse of pale skin underneath. I stopped walking. Something was screaming at me to get back in my truck, but I couldn't articulate why. This was just a person who needed help. Probably someone who'd been in an accident, maybe in shock. "Can you hear me?" I said. "I'm going to come closer, okay? I just want to help." I took another step forward and the figure moved. It dropped into a crouch so fast it didn't look natural. 1 second standing, the next folded down close to the ground. all sharp angles and wrong proportions. I froze. My flashlight beam was still pointed at the ground, but I could see the figure's shadow cast by my headlights. The shadow was all wrong. The arms were too long. The back was hunched in a way that human spines don't bend. "Okay," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm just going to go back to my truck now. You stay right there." The figure turned its head toward me. Slow, deliberate, rotating further than a human neck should allow. The hair fell away completely and I saw its face. I can't describe it properly. It had the right parts: eyes, nose, mouth, but they were arranged slightly wrong, like someone who'd never seen a human face before had tried to build one from memory. The eyes were too far apart, the mouth was too wide, and the skin had this waxy quality, like it wasn't quite real. It smiled at me. That wrong mouth stretched into a grin that showed too many teeth. Then it moved. I've never seen anything move like that. It didn't stand up. It just launched itself forward from its crouch, hands and feet hitting the pavement in this rapid crawling motion that covered ground impossibly fast. Fingers splayed wide, knees bending backward, spine arching. I ran. Didn't think, didn't try to be brave, just turned and sprinted for my truck. I could hear it behind me, those hands and feet slapping against the pavement in a rhythm that didn't sound anything like a person running. I made it to the cab and threw myself inside, slamming the door and hitting the lock. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. It hit the side of the truck. Not a collision, more like it threw itself against the metal. The whole cab shook. Then I heard it climbing, heard those fingers scrabbling against the truck's exterior, pulling itself up. I looked in my driver's side mirror and saw it, crouched on top of my fuel tank, gripping the truck's side rail, that face pressed against my window. This close, I could see that its eyes were completely black. No whites, no iris, just solid black that reflected my truck's interior lights. It opened its mouth and made a sound, low and guttural like gravel being poured through a pipe. Then it hit the window, slammed its palm against the glass hard enough to make me flinch. I put the truck in gear and hit the gas. The engine roared and the wheels spun for a second before catching. The thing on my truck lost its grip and fell off, tumbling onto the pavement behind me. I didn't slow down, didn't check to see if it was okay, just drove, accelerating up to 70 on a road that probably had a 45-mile-per-hour limit. I drove for 20 minutes straight before I felt safe enough to pull over. When I finally stopped at a rest area, I checked my dash cam. The whole encounter was recorded. Me pulling over, getting out, walking back toward the figure, all of it clearly visible in the headlights and the pools of light from the occasional street lamp. The video showed me stopping, showed me backing away, showed me running for my truck. And it showed the thing chasing me, that inhuman crawl, arms and legs bending in ways that made me sick to watch. It showed it climbing onto my truck and falling off when I accelerated. But here's the strange part. When I rewound the video to the beginning, when I first pulled over, I realized something. The figure had been standing in a very specific spot, right next to a mile marker post that I could see clearly in the footage. I looked up what that mile marker was. It corresponded to a section of road where there had been a fatal accident about 6 months earlier. A woman in her 30s had run off the road in the middle of the night, hit a tree, and died before anyone found her. The article mentioned she'd been wearing a long, dark coat. I don't know what I saw that night. I don't know if it was her, or something pretending to be her, or something else entirely. All I know is that it looked almost human, close enough to fool someone from a distance, close enough that my first instinct was to help. But up close it couldn't maintain the illusion. The mask slipped and I saw what was underneath. I uploaded the video to a file-sharing site, posted the link in a couple of trucker forums. Wanted someone else to see it, to verify I wasn't losing my mind. The video got maybe a dozen views before the account was suspended. Terms of service violation, they said. Content depicting violence or harm. But there was no violence in the video, just me running and something chasing, unless they saw something in the footage that I didn't, something that made them decide it needed to be removed. I still drive that route. Can't avoid it, it's part of my regular rotation. But I don't stop for anything anymore. If I see someone on the side of the road, I call it in to highway patrol and keep driving. Let someone with a gun and backup deal with it. Because I learned something that night. Not everything that looks human is human, and some things are very good at pretending until you get close enough to see the truth. I think about that woman who died there. Wonder if what I saw was connected to her somehow. If something took her shape, or if her death created something new, or if it was just using that spot as hunting ground because people's guard is down when they think they're helping someone. The worst part is not knowing if it's still there. If it stands on that shoulder every night, waiting for another driver to be stupid enough to stop. If it's learned from our encounter, gotten better at holding the human shape for longer. I hope I never find out. I hope I never see it again. But sometimes when I'm driving that section of road late at night, I catch myself checking the shoulder, looking for a tall figure in a dark coat, standing at the edge of the pavement. And I drive a little faster when I pass that mile marker. Keep my eyes forward. Don't look too closely at the shadows. Because some things look human until you get close enough to see that they're not. And by then, it's usually too late. My name is Ethan Cross, and I'm a photographer. Not the wedding and portrait kind, though I've done that for money. I mean the kind who chases landscapes and weather, who drives hours to get to a location at the right time for the right light. I've been doing it for about 12 years now, have a decent following on Instagram, sell prints through my website. It's a living, barely. In January of last year, I got a tip about a winter storm moving through the mountains near Grandfather Mountain in North Carolina. The forecast called for heavy snow and high winds, exactly the kind of dramatic conditions that make for incredible photos. I loaded my gear into my truck and headed up there, planning to shoot from various overlooks along the Blue Ridge Parkway. I got there around 4 in the afternoon, just as the storm was starting to intensify. The temperature was dropping fast, down into the teens, and the wind was gusting hard enough to rock my truck. Snow was falling in thick sheets, reducing visibility to maybe 30 feet. I pulled into an overlook area and set up my tripod, trying to get some shots of the storm rolling through the valley below. The light was incredible, these brief breaks in the clouds where sunlight would pour through and illuminate the snow in these golden shafts. I was shooting for maybe 20 minutes when I noticed something odd. There was a light in the distance, down in the valley. At first I thought it was a house or maybe a cell tower, just some ordinary human structure. But it wasn't moving the way lights move in wind. It was perfectly steady, not flickering or swaying at all. I zoomed in with my camera, trying to get a better look. Through the viewfinder I could see the light more clearly. It was bright white, almost blue, and it seemed to be hovering about halfway up the opposite mountainside. No visible support structure, no movement despite the wind that was strong enough to knock me sideways if I wasn't braced against my truck. I took several photos, then pulled out my phone to check if there was anything on the aviation apps. Flight Radar 24 showed nothing in the area. No planes, no helicopters, nothing. I checked my maps to see if there was a road or structure where that light was positioned. Nothing. Just forest and steep mountainside. The light stayed there for about 5 more minutes, perfectly motionless while the storm raged around it. I kept shooting, adjusting my settings to try to capture it as clearly as possible. The snow was getting heavier, sticking to my gear, freezing on my face, but I couldn't stop watching that light. Then it moved. Not slowly, not gradually. It just shifted position instantly, like someone had edited a video and removed frames. 1 second it was on the mountainside, the next it was a quarter mile to the left. No trail of light, no motion blur, just instant relocation. I stopped breathing. My finger was still on the shutter button, camera still clicking away, but my brain had stopped processing what to do next. This wasn't a plane, wasn't a helicopter, wasn't anything I could explain. The light moved again. Another instant jump, this time up the mountain, then again, moving in a pattern that seemed random but deliberate. Each position was too precise to be natural, too purposeful to be coincidence. I lowered my camera and just watched. The light was getting closer, making these instantaneous jumps that brought it nearer to my position with each shift. I started to feel uneasy. What if it was coming toward me specifically? What if it had noticed me watching? That's when I saw the structure. The clouds broke for just a moment, and the late afternoon sun hit the valley from a specific angle. And there, suspended above the mountains, was something massive. Not the light, which was still jumping around. This was something else. Something the light had been near. It was dark, almost black, and it had a shape that hurt to look at. Not because it was scary, but because my brain couldn't process the geometry of it. It seemed to have corners and edges, but they didn't connect the way they should. Parts of it looked solid. Parts looked like they were phasing in and out of visibility. The scale was impossible. I'm talking about something that had to be at least the size of a football field, maybe larger, just hanging there in the air above the mountains, completely silent despite the roaring wind. I fumbled for my camera, brought it up, tried to focus. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. I managed to take maybe 6 or 7 shots before the cloud cover closed back in and the structure disappeared from view. The light stopped moving. It hung in the air for maybe 10 more seconds. Then it went out. Just turned off like someone had flipped a switch. The valley went back to being nothing but snow and darkness and storm. I stood there for I don't know how long. Could have been 5 minutes, could have been 30, just standing in a blizzard, staring at the spot where I'd seen something that shouldn't exist. My camera was still in my hands, snow piling up on the lens, on my shoulders, on my hat. Finally, I packed up my gear and got back in the truck. My fingers were numb, my face was burning from the cold, but I couldn't feel any of it. I was numb in a different way. That deep existential numbness that comes from seeing something that breaks your understanding of reality. I drove down the mountain going way too slow for traffic but too fast for the conditions. Other drivers were honking at me, flashing their lights. I didn't care. I just needed to get somewhere with light and people and normal human activity. When I got back to my hotel in Boone, I immediately pulled the photos off my camera. The light was there in dozens of shots, moving through its impossible pattern. And the structure was there too, in those 6 or 7 frames I'd managed to capture. But looking at the photos on my laptop screen, I realized something that made my skin crawl. The structure's geometry looked even more wrong in the photos than it had in person. The angles seemed to shift depending on how I looked at them. Parts that appeared to be in front would suddenly seem to be behind other parts. It was like looking at an optical illusion, but one that wasn't designed to trick you. Just one that existed in a way that human perception couldn't properly process. I posted one photo online that night, just the light, not the structure. Captioned it asking if anyone knew what could cause a light like this in a storm. I got maybe 24 responses, most of them joking about aliens or saying it was probably just a reflection or lens flare. Then the next morning the photo was gone, not deleted by me. The entire post was just missing from my feed. I checked my laptop and the original file was corrupted. Wouldn't open. Just showed an error message. I tried to open the photos of the structure. Same thing. Every single file corrupted, unopenable, gone. The only photos that still worked were the landscape shots I'd taken before I noticed the light. Everything after that point was corrupted beyond recovery. I tried data recovery software, sent the memory card to a professional recovery service. They said the files showed signs of magnetic damage, like they'd been exposed to a powerful electromagnetic field. But that didn't make sense because my other photos from the same card were fine. I don't know what I saw that day. I've thought about it constantly for over a year now. Was it a government aircraft, some kind of experimental technology? Or was it something else? Something that doesn't fit into our categories? What bothers me most is the scale of it. That structure was ancient. I know that sounds crazy, but that's how it felt. Not like something new, but something incredibly old. Older than the mountains it was hovering above. Older than the stone those mountains are made of. And I keep thinking about how small I felt seeing it. How utterly insignificant. I spend my time photographing mountains, these massive geological features that took millions of years to form. And I saw something that made those mountains look temporary. Fragile. Young. I still go out to shoot in the mountains, still chase storms and dramatic light. But now I find myself scanning the sky more often, looking for lights that don't move right, looking for shapes that don't belong. And sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I wonder if the structure is still there, if it's always been there, just usually invisible, if the storm and the light and that specific angle of sun just happen to reveal something that's normally hidden from view. I wonder how many of those massive ancient things are hanging in the air above us. How many we drive under every day without knowing. How many times we've looked right at them without seeing them because our brains can't process what they are. The mountains have been here for hundreds of millions of years, But what I saw was older, I'm sure of it, and it wasn't impressed by the storm or the mountains or by me standing there with my camera trying to capture something I'd never be able to explain. It was just there, silent and massive and completely indifferent to the human standing below it, shivering in a blizzard, trying to understand what he was looking at. I'm not afraid of it exactly. Fear implies it noticed me. Fear implies I mattered enough to be acknowledged. What I feel is something different, something closer to awe mixed with the terrible understanding that we are so much smaller than we think we are. The mountains will be here long after we're gone, but whatever that structure was, it will be here long after the mountains have eroded into nothing. And that thought keeps me up at night more than any ghost story ever could.